and welcome to Assembly Audible. I'm your host, Jennifer Pierce, multimedia editor with Assembly Magazine, and today we're recording from the 11th annual Assembly Show in Rosemont, Illinois. Joining me from the community hub on the show floor is Dan McKiernan, former CEO and founder of eFlex Systems and current senior manager at Epicor.
Yes.
Right? All right. Dan, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to speak.
Absolutely. I'm so happy to have you here. Let's start by talking. We were talking a little bit before we started recording. There's definitely been some changes, right? So let's talk about what is Epicor, and tell me a little bit about your background just to give our listeners an idea.
Oh, awesome. eFlex Systems is a company that's been around, based in Michigan, so we have a strong automotive background. And we specialized in the actual work end station. And we had evolved over time and developed a product that was well received in the industry. And hence the next step in the story is Epicor. Epicor is a billion-dollar organization that supports the software layers above where we focus. We're a software company, if I didn't say that. But half of their business, or nearly half of their business, is centered around supporting manufacturing in discrete industries like that we typically support. So their focus has been, how can we continue to build that base, enhance it, and grow it? Because we have a large base to start with. So their efforts were centered around, they have a great product offering for their customers that allow you to configure your product on their websites, for example. Deploy that sales order into their ERP, order all the materials that support that process, and then ultimately, in a poor example, hand the order out to the back door to the shop, and the shop kind of takes over from there. And there was not a really good integration. If it was, sometimes they were half-baked, and there wasn't a lot of good connectivity between all that activity that I just described and the actual work that happens in the stations on the floor and all the other stations. And for us, what we're going to do now is we're going to integrate directly into their ERP layer, Enterprise Resource Planning software, and we're in the MES, Manufacturing Execution layer, that sits typically right below that. And now a customer's order would come in, all those things that I described would happen. The order would go through all the normal processes, material would be routed, scheduling would happen, and actually then deployed to a station or a group of stations, and the operators would log in, and it would pass right through to the Epicor ERP for tracking time and activities, and then kick off all the steps that they need to go through to complete the process and build the parts that were ordered by that customer at the beginning of this whole process that I described.
Okay.
I know there was a lot, I'm
sorry.
That
was a lot, but it was very helpful because, I was a little bit confused, so I really appreciate that. So what are some of the challenges that you're seeing in discrete assembly or manufacturing?
Well, I'm going to stay on the software layer because it's kind of our specialty. But when we saw the customers that we engaged prior to an acquisition, where each one of these software layers were islands and there was no cohesive connectivity between all of them. And then these layers are getting kind of crowded, and the challenges are for the smaller and medium companies, how do we seamlessly make this work? So what I'm seeing, and we were part of, is there's some consolidation going on where companies like ours are going to partner or ultimately become another part of the food chain supplying customers. And that's, for us, I think what we're going to see is a continuing evolution of that. And that's going to make it easier for the manufacturers that are not yet gone down this path of digital transformation and enhancing and becoming more competitive. Companies that don't are going to suffer. And this is a very pivotal time for manufacturers, certainly where labor costs are higher and and we're fighting and competing with stuff that's going out of country.
Okay, I understand. So, you may have already touched upon this, but what is it that makes it easier? Is it access to more things? I mean, obviously, if you're working with an enormous company such as Epicor, you have access to things, or speed, or what is it exactly that makes the process easier?
Well, in our case, if we were two independent companies and the customer that we met, they would either already have Epicor as their back office or their enterprise system, and we would have to write with our API connections to do all these things, and it's a time-consuming process, and each engagement with a customer is usually unique. Meaning they want different attributes going down to the station, and they want us to feed back different information. So each one of these integrations costs time and money, and they're usually a little bit of finger pointing goes on about the integration. So it's a challenging situation that adds cost and time to the whole process. It should be seamless. When we see us coming together, this is going to be seamless for the client now. There will be, that layer's gone because it'll already be seamlessly integrated. When an order comes in, it can be routed right to the station. All the attributes about that build will flow with it, and the operator's information about who they are they valid to be able to be doing these things? Are they authorized? Do they have the skill sets? All this stuff that goes on, they're usually separate, will be seamlessly part of one environment. And that's a big step forward for customers that are reaching into the new digitization and Industry 4.0 expansion.
Well, I just had an idea, and you're a great person to speak to. So during this consolidation, I'm sure you've been faced with challenges. What have some of those been, and is there any advice that you can give manufacturers or anybody who might be listening to this podcast? That's a tough one. Sorry, I threw you a curveball there.
No, that's okay. For challenges from a customer's perspective is how to pick the right vendor for what they do. And I can speak to that a little bit, I would say. And usually when they're shopping for systems like what we do, they come from an industry of an existence, right? They service a discrete assembly. And even that is a very diverse base. What you're going to see is the vendors that they come and talk to, like us, competitors to us, usually come from some industry background that brings them to the broader marketplace to go to try to sell to. Try to find somebody that their background and strengths are centered around what they do for a living already, so that you're going to get the most return on that investment. If somebody manages comes from a process industry, which is very different from discrete assembly, you might not have the features that you want if you're doing discrete assembly when they come from something unrelated. I see that quite frequently. There's a lot of sales that goes on in front of it, and you're going to say, yeah, we're the best company for you for all these reasons, but if you pull back the layers, you probably find something that'll stand up a flag that said, no, maybe this company is the right one because of their background. The worst thing that can happen is that you take your first steps into this digital evolution and they become costly or problematic, and now it's going to delay it, or sometimes it might be abandoned, and that ultimately might be the factor that could cause that company to fail. So these are important steps, I feel, that need to be flushed out early on.
Well, and that doesn't seem like, a situation like that doesn't seem like it would be doing anybody any favors.
Oh, of course not. I mean, it's a lot of money that goes down waste, 100% waste.
Yeah. So, what do you see in the future? Any general predictions? I'm just kidding. No, but what do you see on the horizon in terms of in the industry?
I see more consolidation going on in the same spirit of what I've been talking about.
Right.
Where these layers that are focusing on industries come together and be able to offer seamless solutions. So what we're doing at Epicor right now is we're looking for other products that continue the expansion of frontline worker in enablement. There's a lot that's going on behind the scenes at Epicor that's going to continue to build that, and I think you're going to see that in other verticals and other companies doing that, meaning other ERPs, for example, or consolidation to offer a customer a one-stop shopping that can do it from the most standalone operator to the maintenance levels, to supervisory, safety. All the elements of the manufacturing floor now can be touched seamlessly up and down the food chain, from order entry, material replenishment, scheduling, execution, and everything around supporting the execution of the manufacturing environment. That's just a logical extension of what's going on in the industry.
Wow, that's cool. My last question, and without sounding silly, how has this changed, or has this changed your product?
Yes. We came from a very narrow market, but a very challenging one, which kind of created the robust backbone. So the changes for us were when we pivoted to a larger customer base, we had to learn and iterate from that and continue to refine our product. And what we've learned from that iteration is that customers don't have the resources that ultimately are necessary. So we had to continue to refine our product to make it almost plug and play, drag and drop as much as possible, so that the skill sets are minimized and almost focused on the end user that's going to be responsible for the area that we're working on. So let's say the manufacturing floor and stations. There's usually an industrial engineer that's responsible for deploying the work to the station, making sure that the operator is working in the golden zone and everything's optimized for that operator. And without having all of that done in a continuous fashion, we're going to continue to struggle in that area.
Interesting. Well, thank you so much for sharing your insights today.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the time and look forward to coming back to the show. It's been a great show for us.
Oh, awesome. I'm so glad to hear that. So if our listeners want to learn more about Epicor, I'm sure you have a website, or they can get in touch with you perhaps?
I would suggest we go to epicor.com. That's the best place. There's all the information they need. They can find our products and our offerings there for sure.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of Assembly Audible. We invite you to join us for one or both of our shows next year, the Assembly Show South in Nashville or the Assembly Show back in Rosemont in October. Thanks for listening. I'm Jennifer Pierce signing off. This has been Assembly Audible. We'll see you next time.